everyone, it's Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio, and today I'm sharing with you just an experiment and play day with my gel press gel plates. I have my 6x6 and my 5x7. As I start to remove the paint, you'll see that my 6x6 is very old and that they do yellow and discolor over time. My 5x7 is brand new, brand spanking new, and it's very clear and clean. So just if you wondered if it's normal that your gel plate does yellow and discolor over time, yes, it does. Takes a few years, but it does. So to start out with here, I had put some of that iZinc ice glaze stuff that I got from Seth Apter's online store. It has a copper color. They're a translucent glaze that is made by Altadine in France, and he has his own special colors and sets, and I purchased some of them from him because I was curious. The main property of a glaze being that it's translucent. This metallic one is maybe a little bit more opaque than any of the other ones, but I'd put that on my plate and it was mostly dry. And then I wanted to play with some of the Sumi ink, which is a Japanese ink that I purchased, along with some Sumi brushes and this rice paper that I got. It's Daiso brand rice paper, which I thought would be really great for making collage paper. You guys know I'm a collage artist and I like having all these pretty pattern and painted papers that are very thin. And this rice paper is very thin. So I just wanted to try it out. So I cut the sheets in half so that I would end up with like a 6.5 by, it's probably 6.5 by 12 or 10 maybe pieces. This is just the sheet cut in half to try to play with. I also have some regular printer paper, and that's regular printer paper. But what I'd done was use the Sumi ink brush and the Sumi ink to just make a mark over the top of that glaze just to see what it would be like. The ink was still too wet when I tried to pick it up, and I ended up getting some different effects. But I was just trying new stuff. That sometimes you just go and you just play, and that's what this is. It's not instructional in that you can watch what worked and what didn't work as I was having a play day with my gel plates. I also had some new colors of Amsterdam Expert acrylic paint that I got on sale from Jerry's Artorama, and I wanted to try out my new colors. I bought a few different colors of yellow, and this year the Pantone colors of the year are yellow and gray. And in our group Art Joy of Sharing over on Facebook, people have been experimenting with those colors. In January, both our mood board and our pick a stick challenge ended up having those colors featured. And so we've been seeing some really interesting art come across using this color combination. I decided to try to play with my gel plate and some of these yellows that I had purchased, plus a warm gray, and try out doing some mark making on my plate without a brayer. And so I'm using different cut up plastic cards, like key cards or old credit cards. And I also have some scraper tools that I got out that you'll see me use at some point, different scraper tools and texture tools and things, and some rubber stamps, which I had planned on doing a lot more with the rubber stamps, but I ended up not doing very much with them. Also some silicone tipped tools. That's what I was just messing with, just trying to make marks without spreading the paint out with the brayer, because maybe sometimes someone doesn't have a brayer. So I was trying that out, and because of my climate here in Arizona, which is very dry, my paint does dry on my plates very quickly, and I think that this technique would work much better if you had a climate that doesn't dry as quick, because I ended up not getting my whole pattern pulled up, and then I ended up having to go and put some more paint on, and the moisture of that layer of paint, which is a very thin layer of paint, I could pick it up better. So you see me do this a lot when I gel print. I will do something on the plate with, whatever whether it's mark making or whether it's a stencil or whatever, and then I'll pick up the entire thing at the end with a very thin layer of acrylic paint. And I do that because that's what works best in Arizona. My paint dries, and I can pick up the whole thing at once with a very thin layer of paint at the end of the whole thing. And thin is the key, not thick. If you put it on there thick, then you just get a layer of wet, thick paint and you don't get much of the pattern. But if you can thin it out a lot, it remoistens the whole set of layers and picks it up all at once. I also tried, because that one piece, not all the paint came off, I could still see the pattern on the plate, and I tried using my Sumi ink and a brush to add another layer by just painting onto the plate with the brush. But since it's ink, it beat it up and it didn't end up coming out as nicely. It doesn't dry as quick on the plate as just acrylic paint does. So then I tried just painting over the top, doing my doodling or mark making over the top with the brush and the ink, and that worked a lot better. So another experiment. I wanted to still try some more of this translucent glaze, eye ink glaze. So I grabbed a couple different colors of it, and this time I'm going to make a multi-layer print by adding a lot of translucent layers, one over the top, over the top. And there you see my texturing tool, which actually makes some interesting lines on the paper, on the scratch paper as well, which I will probably use in a collage at some point. And then I started layering some other paints. This is shimmery PBO paint, which is PBO iridescent acrylic paint. And it's very translucent. I'm trying to go with lots of translucent paints. That one's also a PBO iridescent, so shimmery, shiny paint. And then I'm doing some marks on the plate using a lid, a cap of something, because that will remove some of the paint, and then the next layer over the top will shine through those under layers. This is a new color that I just got, and it's called oxide. I think it's chromium oxide green, and it's actually a very dull, muted color, which I'm enjoying a lot. of all the paints that I picked up, well, yeah, this and the Prussian blue, and then I got a couple browns, which I didn't have any brown acrylic paint much. So they ended up being some of my favorites. But this is an interesting green because it's just so dull. Like, it's not shiny, it's not bright, it's not in your face. It's just this interesting dull color. Then the last one I put on was more of an opaque, well, that oxide green is opaque, and so is the turquoise or teal that I put on at the end. So just lots of multiple layers, and I'm pressing really hard to try to pick these up, and I get some pretty interesting looks, but my rice paper actually stuck to the plate, and I did have this problem when I was using the glaze. The eye ink glaze seems sticky. So I ended up kind of tearing the top layer of the rice paper off, which, since I'll be tearing those up, I won't be using them as whole pieces anyway. It doesn't really matter, but just something to note that it does tear the rice paper, that if that eye ink glaze is allowed to dry somewhat on the plate, it becomes very sticky. And so picking it up with a regular piece of copy paper like this one is better than using the rice paper, because the rice paper is just, I don't know, it's not tissue. It's not as weak as tissue, but it's not as strong as copy paper either. So it's somewhere in between. But an interesting texture. It has a rough side and a very smooth side. And I was mostly using the smooth side, but when I did use the rougher side, I got kind of a texture on the plate, which was kind of interesting. The next thing I wanted to play around with was some of these acrylic inks. And before I started putting them on, I brayered on a little bit of dish soap, because this usually works with more fluid stuff on your plate, like watercolor, because these type of things want to bead up on the plate and, not be smooth, but be more like bubbles or, watery looking. And so if you put some dish soap on, it has the property of breaking the bubbles and making things more uniform. So I quickly realized when I started to mess with this that acrylic ink is very wet. And so this would work if I took more time, if I was more patient. I could do some really fun things with this. But since I did not act patient, when do I ever act patient? Come on. I mostly just got very watery effects, but that's really cool, especially like this one's very watery. That's cool collage paper right there because it looks like a watercolor, but it's permanent because it's acrylic ink, right? So that'll be fun for collage, but I should have let these dry a little bit more. And that bright pink, that's a fun color. I really like that fluorescent bright pink. And combining it with the limey green is fun too. So this time I was just trying to make marks and put a second layer over that top of that other one, which of course was already wet and still wet and didn't work particularly well. But these are fun, and I will use them for things that they just remind me of flowers a little bit, like, I don't know why, like a flower garden, a bright flower garden. So they'll be fun to use. Wanted to try out some of my other colors. I think this one is the Van Dyke brown that I purchased, which is a very dark brown, almost gray. It's not a warm color. I don't know if this is the one or not. It's hard for me to tell if it's the Van Dyke brown or not. But I used some of those scraping mark making tools again because I put the very dark layer on and then I wanted to go over the top with some brighter or lighter colors and have them come through the pattern and see what that looked like. So I've got out a couple of the yellows again. That one is light lemon yellow, which is obviously a yellow that's been mixed with white. It's a pretty color. And then this other one was permanent yellow dark, I think it's called. And it was a really nice color. A warm yellow color reminds me of sunshine. So I think I purchased 3 colors of yellow, 2 colors of brown. Just, to have some new things without blending myself. You can always blend your own colors. You could just start out with, black, white, red, green, and blue. And you could mix any color you want. But it's nice to have them already mixed in the tubes when you're gel printing. So with the secondary layers that were still stuck to the plate, I got out one of those mostly dried, watery looking papers that I made with the acrylic ink and picked up those patterned bits on the plate with that, and that was pretty cool. And then this color, it's called Naples Yellow Red Light. I love Naples yellow, so when I saw a color that was something like that said Naples yellow on it but wasn't Naples yellow, I wanted to try it. And it ends up being almost kind of flesh toned or something like that. Maybe it's an interesting color. So there you have it, some pattern and kind of fall looking colors. Those other lighter ones will show up on a different picture. When I took the pictures after the fact, I couldn't remember what order anything went in, so I just kind of grouped them together with the other ones that I thought I would use together because they matched and they weren't necessarily made at the same time. So there's that Naples yellow red light again in the middle, and then that oxide green, and then this other one. This one is from Hobby Lobby. It's one of their cheap paints from Hobby Lobby, and it's called Pink. But to me, it's coral. It doesn't look like pink at all to me. So, I mean, it is a pink, but I would say that it's coral. It's very orangey pink. So, trying different mark making again. Some mark making with trash on the left, and then that was a heart-shaped cookie cutter. And some of these little silicone tools, which should just pick that stuff right up. But see, it's already drying, and I'm already having trouble making marks in the paint. So That should really work. If I wanted some of these techniques to work better, I should use maybe an open paint, like a paint that has a longer drying time, or maybe a fluid paint, like golden fluid acrylic or Deco Art Media fluid acrylic. That's what I should probably use. But I got some good information doing this, using the rice paper, using the new colors, using some different techniques that I wanted to try out. There you see the rice paper tore, a big strip of it tore right off. So it doesn't matter because the paper will be torn up anyway, but still you see that it did that. It's like, dang it, stop doing that. And there's all kinds of weights and qualities of rice paper. This one that I have is a very inexpensive. Daiso is an inexpensive brand. Daiso. They even have stores. Sometimes they have stores in the bigger cities. We don't have one, but I know there are Daiso stores, and they sell very inexpensive Asian import type stuff. I had a roll-off paper and I decided to pick up this. This is a new color, Prussian blue. I've had Prussian blue in fluid paint that I really liked, and I saw this in the tube paint, and I thought, I'm going to get a bottle of that because that's a color that I like. And then I'm combining it with some of the oxide green and the light lemon yellow. Whenever you use a stencil, I didn't use very much stencils in this particular playtime, but when you do, if you put the stencils with the excess paint down on another piece of paper, you can usually get a pretty interesting mark as well, if there's enough paint left on it. And that stencil was from Stencil Girl. I used a couple different Stencil Girl stencils. And this, no, this is the Van Dyke brown. So the other brown that I used must have been the sepia. See how that almost looks like gray? It's a different color. It's a kind of cool color. I like it. I need to use some brown paint for an upcoming project that I'm doing. So that you will see upcoming in the future and something that I'm required to do. And so I had to get some brown paint because I wanted to make some papers with brown paint. But this Van Dyke brown is probably my favorite, probably because it's not warm. I guess the browns that I don't like as much are the really almost rusty or milky browns like milk chocolate. I love milk chocolate, love to eat it. Don't like the color at all. I don't know why. It's just a thing. So again, I put some stencils over and pulled some of the color out, and then I decided to use the Prussian blue and then also some of this lighter sky blue that I have from Amsterdam because I think blue and brown look nice together. I've always liked the combination. If you're going to have to use brown, you should put it with blue. That's what I think. So these are also Stencil Girl stencils. If you're wondering, stencilgirlproducts.com is where you can get them. That one with the flowers and hearts is designed by Tracy Bautista. The other one I think might be Carolyn Doobie stencil with words on it. So there are some of those prints with the blues and browns and then a little bit of yellow thrown in. And that's actually that's a nice set right there that I would use together in a collage. So back to the yellows again. I was looking at the 3 yellows that I got, and I decided to try out the 3 yellows just to see. I knew the lightest one is lemon yellow light. I know one of them is permanent yellow deep, and then the other one has a really it's AURALIA, something like that. You know, like aura something is the name of it. Aurelian, maybe, something like that. And I decided to make some marks again through the yellow and then add some color over the top that would peek through where the marks removed the paint. kind of a different little technique that's kind of fun if you want some pattern and variety, but you want it to be mostly a color. Like say you're making a leaf and you want it mostly to be green, but you want it to have pattern and interest. This is a good way to get it on your gel plate. Is to put the color, the main color down, and then scrape through it with something, whether it's you know, a silicone tip tool or a card, or in that case, it was a piece of plastic packaging of some sort that has a grid on it, which I find interesting. So that's a new purple that I got, and I can't remember the name of it. And then that was that coral pink again. I did purchase one purple. And then I put some green, some of that oxide green over the other side with a little bit of a limey green that I had. And I ended up with interesting pattern, which I enjoy. So I was able to get a couple prints off the grid one, so it must have had a lot of paint on it. And then one at the top is my favorite. I can really see using that in something. As you can see, I put these with those bright pink ones that were from before because I couldn't remember the order of how things were printed. So then I think this is my last one. I put a stencil down and I was playing with a different green, I think. I purchased a couple different greens. This one is called sap green, I think. I think it's sap green. So you can see it's more vibrant. It's a more vibrant green than that chromium oxide, which is real dull. Maybe you can see the difference when you compare. And I put it through a stencil, made some marks, and then, I don't know, I was distracted for a bit, so it was long enough for it to dry a little bit on the plate. And then I'm using that same mark making packaging tool. Somebody sent me that in Happy Mail, so I don't know what it is. But I flipped it over on the other side and used the flat side and made some marks on both sides, made it more like a stamp on the right hand side and then more of a removal tool on the left hand side, and got a couple interesting prints that way. Added a little bit of teal and white to pick it up, and then yellow on that side. Naples yellow, I think, which is probably my favorite yellow. Although I'm really liking that lemon yellow light. So that came out interesting. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Please give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment or question below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on your notification bells. Share this on Pinterest. You know, all the good stuff to help out my channel. That's it for me. Thanks. Bye-bye.